Hello.
Hello.
Hello, Norman.
Hi, how nice to be with you.
Yes, you too. We can't see you yet.
Wait a minute. I've just put my video. Here we are.
Yes,
Right.
yay, cheers. Cheers to you. Do we have...
Sorry, I should have got a glass. Sharon does it. It's just plain old Scottish water.
It's okay. We're doing a little more today because, why not? Day drinking, it's a thing now, so.
Yeah. I try.
Nice to meet you.
There's an awful lot of stuff about this at the moment about people who are drinking too much during lockdown, and but it's never tasted so good, has it, as it does now? And I try not to start until about 8:30 p.m.
It's true. It's, you know what? I'm not going to lie to you. It's soda water with the lime.
I mean, if there is anywhere a silver lining to this coronavirus, it has to be Argentine Malbec.
Oh, deliciousness.
Right.
We got dressed up for you today. We just wanted to say that.
That is, that's really nice. Now, you might think this is a plain shirt, but it does have, it is actually,
yes,
it has cups.
Oh,
Okay.
love that.
So it's a very nice shop that I patronize in Paris, as and when we ever get back to Paris, we'll always have Paris.
And we did want to say that we have your book here.
Thank you. One of them, yes.
Well, one of them. This was my first of your books, so
Right.
I figured I wanted to showcase it here. I read it when I was a young artist at the Metropolitan Opera.
Please don't tell me how young, because it'll make me feel very old.
I know, Sandra. What are you thinking?
I'm sorry. I read it just last year.
I mean, and that was probably about the 8th book I'd written. So.
Oh, I know. It's really impressive, and thanks for being on the show. And by the way, this is Carrie.
Hi,
Carrie. It's so nice to meet you both.
Nice to meet you.
How are you doing with all this quarantine?
I am madly busy. I'm just. I broke as soon as all of this started. I stopped working on a book. I just couldn't bridge that gulf between reality and unreality, and thought, okay, just engage with one thing. So I took on more journalism than I'd done for about 10 years, and I'm basically doing that. Just trying to cover the waterfront, because nobody else is telling people what's going on in the music world, are they?
No.
So I do it on my site, and I do it in The Spectator, and I do it in The Critic, and I do it in one or two other places, basically to keep the world informed and connected, and to give a little bit of hope, and to give a little bit of music, and to feel that we're still together in all of this. We're not, although we may be locked in and locked down and all of the other cliches of the present time, if we don't find some way of talking to each other, then we're really lost. And Slip Disc, it has between 2 and 3 million readers a month, which is, tells us. Exactly. It tells us one basic truth. The numbers have gone up quite considerably, probably about 25% during this period, but it was substantial beforehand. But what it tells us is that there are an awful lot more people who are interested in music than we ever see in the concert hall and the opera house.
Right.
And if that's the case, why are we not seeing them there? And why has the infrastructure and the business failed us in such a way that these people who log on every day, and I can see where they're logging on from, and I've got all the maps, and I've got my own, data scientists who are combing it for me, and who tell me, for instance, the most shocking statistic I'll say for the last, who tell me that they are almost 50-50 male and female, which is surprising.
Wow.
Especially, yeah.
Can you get the average age, or is that? And?
Yeah.
Is it younger or older than we think?
51% under 35.
Whoa.
That is great news.
Okay. So why aren't we seeing these people? What are we getting wrong that they're interested, they're engaged, they're coming on the site, some of them several times a day, they're commenting, they're talking to each other, they're relating, they're curious. They're not coming through the doors of our opera houses and concert halls. What have we got wrong?
That's a great
that's
question.
it's the $1 million question now, isn't it? Especially in the next year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And something even more critical than that, which some of the more sensible opera and concert managers are just beginning to admit to themselves, which is when it all does come back. I do so love your outfits. I'm so glad you did this.
Just for you.
I know I did it. Should I wear a jacket? Should I not wear a jacket?
Oh, come on. We couldn't stand looking at each other in our workout gear anymore.
No.
Okay. No. What is now becoming clear is that as and when performance does resume, the older members of the audience are more vulnerable and they won't be coming back. The older 70s are not going to be there. What and who is going to replace them? What are the strategies for replacing them? What is being done? Where is the outreach? What's the new pricing? Who's doing that thinking?
Yeah.
I'm not seeing a lot of it.
I think everybody is just, what's the word we keep using, Carrie? Desperate. Desperation just seems to be abounding. Everyone is in panic mode and selling their wares for free on the internet and singing for free and all of this free content. And I mean, we have a list of questions. We have so much we want to ask you or talk to you about, but
I don't sing for free. Why the hell should you? And I'm not even professional.
Thank you.
No, you're so right. It's not only desperate, but also lacking in advice. What are your agents advising you? Your agents aren't advising you anything because they're in a flat panic, because they've got nothing coming through the door, and because several of them, two firms have gone bust already.
Yes.
One major firm I hear has just laid off a whole load of people. It'll become known early next week. I hope it's not one of your agencies. So is your personal manager saying to you, oh, get your stuff out there for free? Or is it saying to you, just don't bother me until all this is all over? or what's the advice that you're getting? And why should you feel desperate? Why should you feel low? I mean, you've both reached a point in your profession that you're not going to recede from. You're both going to be out there and up there. So now it's bonus time. This is the time for rethinking. This is the time for thinking, what do we want to do to make it count for the rest of our lives? Instead of rushing from one engagement to another, instead of rushing from one airport to another, instead of doing all those often humiliating things that we have to do in getting visas and going through customs and having to explain ourselves. I mean, we don't even explain ourselves as much to our spouses as we do as we do to people who organize our travel.
True.
Instead of doing all of that, this is good thinking time. This is really good thinking time and good engaging time. And I love this. I mean, I love talking to you like this. I gave a webinar in Australia last week at the National Academy. Fantastic. I didn't have to get on a plane.
Yeah.
Isn't it? And we can still chit chat. And my manager has been very proactive, and I applaud him. I know Carrie's manager has been too, but I think it comes from the singer as well. Carrie has initiated contact with her manager. I have with mine. In that, what do you feel about all of this? What do you think we should be doing? And what kind of content should we be putting out there? And how do you feel about it? And I think that it's up to us as the singers too, to initiate that conversation instead of just sitting here panicking, going, I lost another job. People are going to forget me. think, as you said, think about the future. Take this time to regroup, to realize what's really important to us now as artists, not panic.
No, I kept thinking, when we cross over this bridge into whatever's coming next, I wanted to look back at this time and I wanted it to look a certain way. I wanted to have a vision of that, a picture of that. What did I do? How did I help? And that's why we started this. It was A, we wanted to laugh because we all need a little laughter right now. And B, we really just wanted some honest and real conversations around, well, I'm a little disappointed you people today around water, but
and Carrie's in the earliest time zone too. She's in Nashville. She's an hour.
It is new. It's past noon, and this is whiskey.
Like 50% malt downstairs. Have I got time to run down and get that?
Yeah, feel free.
Yeah, do it. Go for it.
I can cut at it.
Yeah,
girl, I wanted a day drink today. I got my nose swabbed.
You got. We can find a reason for drinking anytime, can't we? I don't have a bra or
Oh,
underwear.
I love you. I had that on.
You too?
I wore it. Well, I put panties on to get swabbed because, my mother raised me right. And if you get in a car accident, you need to have clean underwear on.
Norman's going to come back and he's going to hear us. There it is. Yes. Oh, now what? Oh, lovely.
It's 46.3%.
Oh, so our conversation's going to get very, very rousing soon.
I mean, the man who made it autographed it.
Wow.
Doesn't get better.
That's so civilized. Well.
And cheers to both of you.
Cheers. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Much better.
Oh, God, that's good.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yes.
Oh.
See? It's okay. You're only an hour or two off, so it doesn't matter.
The other characteristic of this period, and you're so right, I think it was you, Kerry, who said, was it Kerry or was it Sandra who said, how are we going to remember this period?
Kerry.
It's such an important thing, Kerry. I think we need to put a name to it, or if not a name, we put a color to it.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say this is our Indigo Period. And we can then say to ourselves and ask ourselves, what is it that we achieved in that Indigo Period? In what way did we change and improve our circumstances?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the one takeaway is going to be, this is the time where we realized that we could take control. We could take back control of our lives.
Yeah.
We can actually determine so many things. We don't have to wait for people to come and give us dates or give us commissions.
Mm-hmm.
We make the running. We decide what we want to do, how we want to perform, where we want to perform. We can be much more the initiators because everything else around us is now suddenly fragile and pliable. So I see it, I see that as quite a positive. But
reflective. For me, it's kind of very reflective time. And artistic in different ways than just singing. For instance, this show. But I've learned about, I say this every time, but I had no idea what Zoom was 2-3 months ago. But I've learned social media, and Carrie and I, we started this as just two silly blondes, opera singers, trying to figure out internet. And what Carrie has learned, she does all the editing, and she has just taken that upon herself to teach herself all of this during this time. And what a luxury. And you're really good at it, Carrie, by the way. You really are. No, but we've learned so many different other aspects of our artistic side. And I think that that's really, really wonderful because it hasn't been.
Carrie, you could be giving webinars in this. People are desperate for this skill.
I know.
I just started playing and pushing buttons and I thought, ooh, can I do this? Oh, how fun would that be? And then I fell down the rabbit hole and actually am now learning Final Cut Pro, which is in madness. And whoever thought my life would look like this? But I asked someone, I said, why does this make me so happy to do this? And they said, because it's a way for you to still be creative. And I didn't link the two, because in editing and recording this, we can tell a story the way we want to tell the story. All three of us, we all have say over how we want this story out on the internet, and that's what I wanted.
Yeah.
So it's a creative outlet for me, which has brought me some stress, but some good stress and some joy as well.
And as the editor, you're equivalent to the opera director.
Yes,
it's true. That's a good analogy. It is.
So you've upgraded yourself automatically.
I did.
Yay! I think so. Tell us, talk to us about Slip Disc, because where did that name come from? Of all names, Slip Disc.
Because I'd written a book. Gosh, this is a long time ago, and you're probably both still in grade school. I'd written a book about I'd written a history of the classical record industry and the demise of the record industry, which was already apparent then. This would have been about 2007 and 2006, 2007. And in starting, I was a bit reluctant to start the blog because, like you, I know, what was it Samuel Johnson said? None but a fool ever wrote for money, but for money. Okay, and never in my life had I written for free, or had I even experimented with giving it away. And you sort of felt like Irma La Douce on a Sunday, But I thought, okay, let's try it, and let's see if I can possibly find a different voice or a different set of voices. And because you're not normally allowed that versatility in writing. If you're writing journalism, then journalism has a kind of sing-song quality to it, especially if it's broadcast journalism. It's you are speaking in recitativo.
Yes.
Every time you turn on the news, somebody is doing recit.
Yes, it's a.
So exactly. So it's not a natural form of writing. When you're writing a book, well, then you set your own parameters and you have your own voice, but you are to some extent the prisoner of the story that you're telling. The story is going to take its own momentum, especially if it's fiction, but it's non-fiction as well. Story is going to take its own momentum, and in the end, what you introduce of yourself is not so much personality, but little sides of wit and charm and pleasantry. So it's not quite you. When you're actually not writing for any kind of money at all, when you're setting up a blog, and I called it Slip Disc because enter the record industry, slip disc crash, right?
That's good, because I took it too literally.
And not the medical one.
Well, when you Google Slip Disc, that's what comes up. Herniated disc, healthline.com.
Oh my Lord.
You could have called it gallstones.
Sorry. Oh, come on.
There's a lot of or could have got worse. I mean, there's a lot.
We have to laugh.
Exactly. I'll get my data scientist to check and see how many urologists I have among my readers.
You'd be surprised. It's the first thing that comes up.
Exactly. Neither of you is married to a urologist, right?
No.
No disrespect. No.
No.
Oh my gosh, I love that.
So it's finding that different voice, and the voice then becomes a very communicative voice. It becomes very much me and you. It's much more the voice that I use when giving talks and lectures, and it is also a kind of informality. One of the reasons I eventually got out of journalism, I decided when I hit 60, I've had enough. I've done enough. I'm going to start repeating myself soon, so I just don't want to do a weekly column anymore. It's enough. But one of the things that I was finding was an urge to over-explain. I was under pressure from my editors to over-explain. The readers don't know. The readers don't understand. And I'm saying, no, on the contrary. Actually, one really needs to challenge the readers a little bit more to make them want to know more. So we were having that kind of conversation. I thought, well, let's have a forum in which I can actually talk to people who understand what I'm saying, and I don't have to over-explain it. And because I don't do that, I can do it quite quickly, and it can take just 2 hours of my day, rather than much longer for a piece of worked through journalism. And yet that became slip disc. And at the time that I started, people said the maximum possible. You will never get more than 10,000 readers a day. So
prove them wrong.
Yep.
It's 70,000 at the moment and rising.
Love that.
Congratulations.
So, yeah. So I must be doing something right. I'm doing it almost all myself. I mean, I have a little bit of assistance. Obviously, I have a site backup. I've got somebody who looks after the technical side. I've got somebody who looks after the advertising. The site is profitable, and I have a little bit of assistance on the editorial side. But basically, and I really like. I ought to take on somebody younger and sort of just help them, train them up, and get the thing going and find other. Sandra, yes, Sonia, you're on.
I'm ready. Let's do it.
So you get all the information yourself. You call all that.
You know, and of course, you've got to be careful about all the other things. You've got to be careful about libel and defamation and legal action.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's quite a handful, but I try to limit it to 2 hours a day, which gives me time to do all the other fun things.
Do people send you information to post on it, or do you?
This was the real revelation. Once I started talking to a discrete community, discrete, CRETE, it became very different from journalism. Journalism, you had to go out and look for stories, and then you had to stand them up. And here, I just turned on my screen in the morning, and there have been half a dozen people at least overnight who have been sending me stories, and I can judge from experience whether there's substance in them, whether it needs to be pursued, whether to leave it alone, whether to get further back up or get somebody to do a bit of research for me. So no, and because it became basically the only message board in the music world, yeah, that's where it comes.
That's great. We love it.
Thank you. You know, and I love it that you love it, because I know, especially the people who don't read it, they all read it so closely.
Oh, come on, gossip. The gossip business.
The gossip business is good.
People love gossip.
Yeah, the serious stuff. People messing up. People doing things they really shouldn't be doing.
No.
Yeah, that's what we need to be watching for. And we all know what they do and who they are.
Yeah, yes, we do. You have the most. You have the most. Yeah, you have the most. Yes, but Sandra, we don't have to do that anymore if we.
Oh, that's right.
Hallelujah.
Okay, well, we'll be sending you some emails.
You also have some of the most amazing commentators too that comment on your site. I mean, some of those have been discussed as well too, you know, behind closed doors. So
some of them are quite robust, aren't they?
They really are. Yeah.
Vitriol is epic sometimes. It's just the things that there's no filter with some of these people.
That's right. But I find that so interesting. I've had a lifelong interest in psychoanalysis. I've written my latest book. Where is it? It's around here somewhere. Freud features quite largely in it, so I've read a hell of a lot of Freud. And what I'm seeing is people writing without filtration. So we are reading, if not quite their unconscious, at least they're semi-conscious. And these are your people. These are my people. These are people for whom music is a primary passion, a fatal attraction. So when I engage with them and when you engage with them, we have a little better understanding of what it is that they're thinking. You know, you look out at an audience and you think, hopefully, that this is an adoring and supportive audience, and probably.
Yeah, I think they want us to fail more than succeed sometimes. But
yeah, I was going to say even in Canada.
Hey,
no, I love Canada. No, love Canada. I mean, I wrote a piece. I read
that on the Critic.
Happened. Yeah, I mean, Canada's where it's at.
It's true.
I see the maple leaf behind you.
Oh yes, well I have to have it up there, you know. Yeah.
You look at the audience and you think of it as a uniformity, and you hope that it is supportive and appreciative and everything else. But there's a whole range of emotions going on out there, and most of them have nothing to do with what it is that you're doing in terms of performance. Mm-hmm. In that sense, and this is a way also in which I find that engaging in this way on Zoom is so productive. In that sense, it's incredibly liberating. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Because, you know, when I'm in a room and I'm addressing 100 people or 200 people about a particular subject, I'm looking at the audience, I'm checking who's engaged, who's, you know, mm-hmm. Can they hear me at the back? All of those things. I don't have to do that now.
No.
I'm looking at Sandra, I'm looking at Kerry. We're making a little bit of eye contact insofar as Zoom makes that possible.
Yeah, there.
But I'm relieved of the obligation to delve any further into Sandra and Kerry. I can develop my thoughts and my ideas, and then I can sit back and I can listen to yours. Mm-hmm. And that it's a novel sensation, but so far a very good one.
Okay.
Yeah, I enjoy it.
Because we get criticism all the time. And my husband taught me one thing years ago. He said to me, be a duck, Sandra. Just let it wash over your back. Just be a duck. He's British, by the way. Mm-hmm. Mm. How do you deal with all that just criticism and comments? Do you even read them? Do you just push them aside?
You tell me first, Kerry. How do you deal with it?
A singer told me, an established singer told me a long time ago, if you believe the good, you have to believe the bad. Mm-hmm. And so then I've seen reviews that are horrible for a production and they make the production sold out. I've seen great reviews and it's sold out. I've seen great reviews and there's no one in the house. You know, it's half full. So I'm grateful for reviews for things like that actually can put, you know, heinies in the seats. I always know I was told as well to be very critical and honest of my performance. So when I walk off stage or even sometimes on stage, I know exactly what I did. If it was good, if it was bad, if I could have done better, whatever, or if I really nailed it. So for me, if it can help me put a great review on my website or have somebody read about it in that sense, then wonderful. I guess at the end of it, I know what I did, whether it was good or bad. And so it doesn't really matter what they say. I just hope that it can help sell seats, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we live with it. I suppose my watchword is something that Arthur Schnabel once said. He said, the audience applaud even when it's good. Okay, yeah, so we're the biggest critics of ourselves, we know.
Absolutely.
So what they say about us, it's really marginal, it's peripheral, it is off a duck's back, as your husband says. It is. Sometimes it's unpleasant.
Mm-hmm. Well, when they attack you personally, then it's fine. You can critique my singing or my acting or our singing and acting or your writing, but when they attack you personally, there's a line that has been crossed, in my opinion, and they don't know if we had a horrible day, if your mother was sick, or or that you had a fight with your husband. They don't know that, and I think people don't always take that into account, that we're human and that we have emotions and feelings and that we're not robots and every day is the same.
Sure.
Yeah. I think. So what do you think makes a good reviewer? If you were, Norman, if the best reviewer of classical music, what do you think is a good review as opposed to a bad review?
Look, criticism is essential. We need it in every part of our society, otherwise we don't have democracy. and we're all subject to it, and whether we like it or not, it doesn't matter. We have to respect it, because there has to be some kind of independent measure of what we're doing, aside from our own subjective measure of whether it was any good or not. I've been in a position where I've been in charge of large parts of a major newspaper. I was assistant editor of the paper, and I was in charge of the arts, and I hired and fired a lot of critics. I actually fired a lot before I hired them, and I knew what I was looking for in critics across all the art forms. I was looking for somebody who was engaged, informed, and honest. And if I found those three qualities, and the person could write as well, then we were fine. And I didn't necessarily have to agree with them, but and I had occasions. I'm thinking of one very, very senior violinist, somebody whom I loved dearly, and who was giving a concert in London long after. If I give the gender, I'll give it away. Long after this person should have still been giving concerts, and was desperate to have it reviewed. So I said, fine, I'll send along a critic. I sent a critic, and the critic said problems with intonation. And I had this violinist on the phone for an hour the next morning. As I say, it's somebody I liked and admired. I mean, we were friends in a way, but I mean, there was a great legacy behind them. And the violinist said to me, what is your view? If you, Norman Lebrecht, tell me there was a problem with my intonation last night, I will stop playing immediately. And I said, I'm not going to take that responsibility. All I'm going to do is I'm going to back the critic that I sent. The critic said, you had a problem with intonation. Leave it there. I'll see you for a drink later. That I think is a way of dealing with it, as long as the critic is genuine and is informed and is honest. And we know that a lot of them aren't. And we know that a lot of newspapers have an internal agenda, and that certain editors have an agenda. Yeah. And we have to perform certain dances around that in order to do what we do, and not to get terribly harmed. And there are certain newspapers that I've come up against myself, quite heavily, because they have an agenda against me. They don't like me encroaching on their patch. They don't like me having stories a long time before they get them. Okay. And so we just, you deal with it. You deal with it as long as you focus on what you do, as long as you know that what you do is the best you can possibly do, and it's what you want to do, and it's what makes you get out of bed in the morning. The rest is trivial.
Yeah, beautifully said. Thank you.
Yes, I was curious about that. How you deal with, I'm sure along the years, you've made enemies, I guess, if that's the right word, and I just was wondering how you deal with that.
Look, I wrote a book called The Maestro Myths. This is really a long time ago. It's 1991, okay? And it was the first history of conducting since Harold Schomburg's The Great Conductors, which was 25 years earlier. First history of conducting in any language, so far as I could tell. And I was a huge admirer of Harold's, and he was one of the critics that I really, really respected. Firstly, he knew piano like nobody else did, because he'd been a student of Gabrilowitsch, and he was a grandmaster at chess.
Oh, cool.
Well, we're talking of a proper critic.
Wow.
Okay.
Wow.
You've got to. That's the other thing that I look for in a critic: somebody who knew more than the field that they were supposed to be criticized. You need to have a second dimension. But I knew Harold's book well, and I knew its limitations, and I knew that it was very heavily North America centric, and he didn't really follow the European scene, and he was monoglot, so he didn't read other languages. So I took it on, and I took on aspects of it, and I particularly took on the aspect of power and how power is abused by conductors. The subtitle was Great Conductors in Pursuit of Power. Yeah.
Okay.
And at the time, 1991, I mean, that was really still the time of the Karajan Empire, and all the mini Karajans who were trying to create dominions for themselves. That's not really the major problem in conducting today, but we're talking of quite a long time ago. It came out, it was reviewed, I think it started out quite successfully. The New York Times was so terrified of it, they sent it down to a professor in Texas to review. Nobody in town, wanted to tangle with the music business on this one. But
that's amazing.
on the last day of my eldest daughter's day at grade school, she's 11 years old and she's just graduated. We went and picked her up from school with the little ones, and we all went out to lunch. And on the way, I picked up a copy of the Times Literary Supplement. And I opened the TLS, we've ordered, and I think we'll just flip through. Oh, there's a review of my book. Oh, that's nice. And it's by a professor of German at Cambridge. Okay. And it begins, this may be the most disgusting book I've ever read.
Why? What did you do? What did you do in the exact moment after you read that sentence?
I would have grabbed a glass.
I'm just seeing this playing out in my head, and I want to know what happened.
I said it was an Indian restaurant. I said to the waiter, I asked for the vindaloo to be medium. Can you make it hot?
Now.
Yeah.
I looked at my family and I thought, put it away. There are greater priorities than this. And later on I read it at leisure, and then I realized that I had trodden massively upon his corns because he was completely uncritical admirer of Wilhelm Furtwängler. And I was looking at the way in which Furtwängler had engaged with the Nazi state, had compromised himself with the Nazi state, and had actually knowingly abandoned his orchestra at a time when he should have been leading it in January 1945. So Furtwängler was in no sense a hero. He's one of the greatest conductors we've ever seen. I am still blown apart by almost any Furtwängler performance that I hear.
Okay.
But he is an extremely flawed human being, and I dealt with those flaws in the book, and this was too much for the professor of Germanics at Cambridge, and so he let pass. So when the paperback came around, I said, can we have that please as the first comment on the back? So the book went into 17 languages, sold 250,000 copies. I mean,
amazing.
So addressing,
So,
face it head on.
Yeah.
Speaking of facing it head on, you don't have to respond to this, but I know that you have been a big proponent of the hashtag #MeToo and talking about that in classical music on slip disc. Mm-hmm. And you really were the first one to scoop a lot of those stories. Do you think that it's peaked? Do you think the pandemic has kind of made people forget about it? Are we done with that? Or do you think there's more stories to come?
I think we're done with it. And not because there are not still malefactors around, not because there are not still abusers, they are, and between the three of us, we probably know some of them. Mm. But because the subject is out in the open, it was never out in the open before. And I did as much as I could within the limits of the law to bring it out into the open. I got Nigel Kennedy to talk about the child abuse. I mean, I was primarily initially concerned with child abuse, with abuse of underage boys and girls. So I got Nigel Kennedy to talk about abuse of pupils of both sexes at the Yearly Menuhin School. And that started to open up a debate in education, and then broke it open wider here. And we now, in Britain, we now have a national inquiry into abuse of students at music schools. Okay, so it couldn't be bigger. At one of these schools at Chetham's in Manchester, also at the Royal Northern College in Manchester, there were malefactors who were known to all and who just got away with it. And the people who were in charge of these institutions, the boards, the heads, the principals, they've got away scot-free, and that hurts because lives were ruined. In one case, in the trial of one man, one of the victims who had very bravely come forward to testify and who was subjected to a horrible cross-examination, went home and took her life. And it was just... So having started it, having opened it, I felt, yeah, here was a real need just to keep it alive, to give hope for the people who've been abused, to give them an idea that they'd not been alone. When I had a letter in the mid-90s from somebody who detailed serious sexual abuse of young people at the Metropolitan Opera, and also serious abuse of power by individuals whom we all know and who we don't need to name. And I brought it forward as much as I could without wanting to spend the next few years in court.
Right.
I just wanted to put, all I can do in my role is to put it on the agenda. So I put it on the agenda then, it stayed there, other people took it up, and then it fed into the early parts of the Me Too, and when other journalists started investigating, I did what I could to help and what I could.
Thank you.
Just to bring, you know, to bring a little, I mean, for heaven's sake, bring a little bit of justice into it. And I think now that it's out into the open, those who might have those inclinations, they're going to be so careful before they.
Yes.
Yeah. I think we're all safer now.
It was a discussion that had to happen, and investigations that had to happen. Yeah. And I recall Carrie and we were in New York not too many months ago, and me just sitting there when somebody that I knew had abused me. And I remember sitting there. I remember, Carrie, we were at the restaurant, and I was just uncontrollably crying because I couldn't hold it in anymore. And I thank you for, we thank you for opening that door.
Yeah, for shining a light on it. It was just in the dark for so long, and a lot, I mean, when I grew up in the business, I just thought that was something we had to deal with. It was something to maneuver around. How do you maneuver around this safely? What are your lines that you're going to cross? What are the lines either way? And it's interesting now, and really kind of wonderful now, to talk to artists that are 10 years, 15 years younger than I am, that say, what? You had to deal with what?
Yeah. Because
that's not happening in rehearsals now.
Well, nothing's happening in rehearsals now. Sorry.
No, that's why we're friends. So no, but it's really funny to hear them, their surprise. And what do you mean somebody did that or somebody said that to you? So, no, I have loved in the last year or two, the changes that have happened in rehearsal, things I don't have to worry about anymore or even think about really. So, I mean, there's still changes that do need to keep happening, but.
Tell me.
Yeah.
What do you think still needs to change, Carrie?
Well, I think that there are, people need to know that they have a voice to say, I'm uncomfortable with that scene, with doing that with this person, and not being ostracized or penalized or, oh, we don't want to hire her again because she's a troublemaker. Does that make sense? I've seen that with other people, singers that have come and asked me because I'm older and say, what do I say? Because I don't want to do this. And so I think that there still needs to be conversations around that.
And men and women.
Men and women.
Men and women, yes. No, I've known, quite a few men who've been subjected to that sort of abuse, and possibly some who still are. But if we can have an open conversation about it, we can.
Yes. I think the light needed to be shown so that things could change, so that people could feel, especially the young singers coming up, where they felt like they could say, this isn't okay. I don't feel comfortable in this situation. And I'm just talking about staging. Can we change this to make this work? Because sometimes we're not working with the nicest colleagues. So really, there's things you really don't want to do. And I really appreciate now someone actually saying to me, can I, may I? And then the power's back in my court instead of the power being in the directors, the conductors, the power now shifted back to me. I appreciate that now.
Who do you feel has the most power now not now, but before in the operatic world? The conductors, the stage directors, who do you think controls all of that now?
At the moment, nobody's in control.
Yeah.
this has been a very great leveler. And one of the first things that I observed when I started writing about this world, and that's, Maestro Myth, and then When the Music Stops, which was called something else in America. In America, it's Who Killed Classical Music. Sandra, if you turn that book onto its side, I'm not in charge of titles, okay? They called it, that's it. Now, when you look at the spine, what does it say? Turn it around, read the spine.
Norman Lebrecht, Birch Lane.
Classical music, Norman Lebrecht.
Yeah.
So, that was the sort of reaction I was getting. I was the man that was destroying classical music. All right? What I was feeling was the helplessness of almost all artists who were not conductors. Because artists were traveling around, they were going from one job to the next. If you were a singer, at least you'd be in a production for a few weeks together with other singers, you could exchange views and so forth. If you were a pianist or a violinist, you were on a plane every other night and you were moving and you didn't see anyone. And your only lifeline, the only person who could give you some perspective about what was going on or could address your unease was your agent. That gave the agents tremendous power. Mm-hmm. And I really felt for the helplessness of artists who were having to depend on somebody with a vested interest, which might not be in their interest, mm-hmm. For all of their information. So part of what I did and part of what I do is to try and keep a flow of information to the artists wherever they may be. They can at least be enlightened about what the hell is going on. Yeah. So agents were inordinately powerful, and the biggest of them were the most powerful of them all. And I've dealt with them in the books, and we don't need to discuss who they were because mostly there are no longer any such powerful agents. No. There aren't. There are some rather good boutique agencies. There are people who think they are large agencies, but the last 3-4 years they've been struggling. And right now, there's no guarantee that any of them is going to be in business 2 months from now because money going out and nothing coming in through the door. And they have no strategy to deal with it. So power has gone from the agencies. It also departed from the conductors. There were certain conductors who were able to maintain hegemonies within their own institutions, but one by one, those hegemonies have been broken. One of the key ways in which the artist-conductor power worked was if you were powerful agent and powerful conductor, then your agent would suggest to you the singers you should be casting in your production, and the soloist you should be hiring in your concert season. That doesn't work anymore. No. That doesn't work anymore. Yannick may make suggestions at the Met, but he's never going to cast an opera, and he's not going to be able to put his favorites in that, even if he were minded to do so, and I suspect he probably isn't. The music director of a major American orchestra, with 1 or 2 exceptions who still belong to the old world of maestro power. The music directors, this quite shocked me. I mean, I had this conversation a while back. I won't say the name of the particular president of an orchestra, but it's somebody with whom I've had long conversations over many years, somebody who I like and trust, who said, there is no way that my music director picks the soloist. I pick the soloists. I said, what about guest conductors? I pick the guest conductors. So what does the music director do? The music director helps with me putting a shape on the season and decides whatever it is that he or she wants to conduct. The rest, that's shifted. So it's what there has been is a breakdown of the old power structures, and there are new sort of centers of power, but they're less, I hesitate to use the word in these particular circumstances, they're less viral than they used to be. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So now there is actually more empowerment for the individual artist. and the individual artist can do more to sway his or her own circumstances. You're no longer, you're no longer a pawn being pushed around by a hidden hand. And you no longer have to be nice to conductors if you don't want to be. You know, all of those.
You promise?
I'll sign it for you, Sandra. I'll sign it for you.
Are you sure about that?
Try it. Let me know.
Well, Carrie does know that I only wear one contact when I'm singing on stage, because that's only for up close. The far away one, not as important.
Yeah. You know what the Sound of Vienna Philharmonic? You said, who's conducting? They say, we never look.
We never look. Oh my God.
When the violin business in America was a conversation between Isaac Stern and his agent Lee Lamont and Dorothy DeLay at Juilliard as to who was going to be promoting, you know, what was the coming talent and where were they going to be placed. At that time, Dorothy DeLay would say to her students, after a concerto, you always go to the conductor's room and say thank you.
Good advice.
Mm-hmm.
Good advice for then. I'm not sure it's necessary anymore.
But if you cross your fingers and put them behind your back.
Yeah, you know, obviously you have to get on with people. But I don't think you have to do it in that obsequious way anymore. Yeah, it's your concerto. You're the violinist. You play.
Thank you. No, it's true.
What do you think, with what's happened now, as artists, as Sandra and I, what should our relationship be with the public until we're able to do what we do again? I mean, I'm not a big fan of the Zoom singing, so I'm not really quite sure what we are supposed to do. I'm happy to help the opera companies in whatever way they.
Yeah, well, we already are with all of our free streaming out there.
Yeah, true. But what do you think our role is now?
Talk to me. How are you spending your days at the moment?
Doing this and editing videos and learning new software and talking with singers and friends and managers and just seeing what the latest is and what's going on. How are they opening up in Europe?
I think the better question is what we're not doing, right, Carrie? And that is singing.
Yeah. You don't have to do exercises.
We should.
Well, we should, but no.
This is so good. You know, if you're violinists and you didn't do your exercises and you didn't take, you'd be dead in a week. I mean, you'd lose it. Your fingers would turn to flab.
Well, it's going to take us a while to get back.
It'll take a while to get back. You know, it takes a footballer a while to get back, but you don't have to do it every day. Not having to do it every day actually allows you a greater freedom to think and construct your lives and strategize. And whatever it is your managers are telling you about what's going on in Europe, they probably read it first on slip disc. So if you get up an hour earlier than they you'll know.
Violin, you have an instrument, like the piano here, this is an instrument. But our instrument is here and it's emotional based as well. Yeah. So we've been very emotional, and this has been an emotional time for everyone. And it's hard to sing when you're that emotional, and also when you have nothing to really look forward to because we don't know what.
Yeah, sure. No, I totally get all of that. Yeah. I think what you're doing is exactly what you should be doing, which is communicating in another way. I don't go along with all of this free stuff. I think most of it is wasted, and most of it is just, flagging. I'm still here.
Yes. Okay.
And especially institutions. Oh yeah, we're going to stream everything we've got. We're going to stream you our archives. We're going to stream you our drains.
And they're going to get used to it.
Yeah, who's watching? Who needs it?
I don't know. Who wants to watch the videos that were really just for archival that are from the back of the theater? I don't want to watch that. I'm horrified. I was horrified when I saw that.
Yeah. No, you don't want to do that. So
and I think the market is saturated. I think there's so much out there now. I don't know. We have strong feelings about this,
Yeah,
and
we
it sounds like you.
No, I would say two things, just from my experience. One is communicate in whatever way you can, and clearly you're doing it with these videos, which I think is just marvelous, and yeah, absolutely terrific. And this is the best way to engage people with your world, to be open, to talk among friends, among colleagues, to talk from the heart, to be human among humans, and that keeps them engaged with who you are and what you do. The other thing is to enlighten, and that doesn't necessarily mean to teach. There are far too many people out there offering voice lessons at the moment.
I know.
Yeah.
I refuse.
So it doesn't need to teach. But
It's a tactile thing. It's like
right.
the human voice. It has to hit you. The
Yes.
visceral feeling of the human voice hitting your body. You don't get through Zoom. You don't get through.
That's right. That's right. It's those things. It's talking about those things. It's talking about what it is to be a singer, how it is, how you get there, when you're there, what do you do with it? What are these actual processes? If you were to construct a series in which the two of you talk either together or with others, or just one of you talk about that simple thing, what I do, what I need, what makes it good for me and for you. There is a public hunger for enlightenment. People are giving not so much tuition, but information in so many fields, in so many ways. And it may be, it may even be quite technical. You might just want to give a couple of talks about your individual fach.
I gave a talk with Seattle Opera. They wanted me to do a talk on how I warmed up. And I said, actually, I think the why is much more interesting. Yeah. And it blew up the internet. Yeah. Well, in opera terms.
Yeah.
It was kind of like.
but that's when this Indigo period is over. You will not be remembered for all the free streams that people have done. You will be remembered for having done something distinctive, for having carved your own path, for having done it Sinatra style your way, and for having left an impression on people that you haven't joined the herd of despair, that you haven't thrown your hands up in the air and said, where's my next gig coming from? That you've actually taken possession of yourself and your circumstances, and you've thought very carefully, this is who I am, this is where I want to be, and this is how we carry it forward. And, I'm saying this.
Thank you.
I'm saying this as much to me as I am to you, because, you're both much younger than I am.
Well, you can see that.
I'm trying to let the natural color grow out, but it's stubbornly.
As my husband says, at least you still have it.
It's stubbornly refusing. We're thinking, what are we thinking? We're thinking the next 10, 20, 30 years between the three of us, yes? As to how our lives are going to shape up within that time. And this is where we do the planning. This is where we do the thinking. It's not our agents, bless them, who do the thinking for us. I mean, agents are very good at sounding board. I have a very good literary agent. And he's a very good sounding board, and I can try ideas on him, but I don't expect him to initiate those ideas. The ideas have to come from within me as they come from within you. Yeah. And this is the time to construct those while at the same time doing what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Finding a means, finding a channel of communication, finding ways of reaching an audience. And listen, to both of you, you know, Slip Disc is open to you. Anything you want to do on Slip Disc, whether it's writing something or posting videos or whatnot. Come on, yeah, of course, anytime. Okay.
Thank you. Can we have 2 more minutes?
It's only 2 or 3 minutes. It's only 2 or 3 million people, so it's quite small.
No pressure.
Quite small compared to an opera.
We would love to have you on again. We would love to, if you're willing. Maybe we have, as things start to open, we can check back in with you, because really, I think people are going to find this so informative and so helpful.
Really.
With the greatest of pleasure.
No, thank you for saying what you said, because there are, you know, I don't know if a lot of people understand this about most opera singers. We're very extroverted when we're on stage, but there's a lot of us that are very introverted in our personal life and our home lives. And I've struggled, Sandra and I've talked about this, because there's moments I wake up at 3 a.m. and I put that on the internet. Oh my God. I'm really showing who I am, which a lot of us hide some of those things to be divas and be opera singers, and as Sandra is an opera star. So, but the reason to keep going and to move forward is for, yes, my star friend, Sandra. You know, the reason to keep going is because for me, I wanted to see this content. I needed it. I needed to see it and talk to other people. And as Sandra and I've said, sometimes it turns into a therapy session, and it makes us feel better by the time we get off the interview. So
I feel much better now, and I feel like we've learned a lot about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but this is also how we're seeing our therapists nowadays, isn't it?
We don't need a therapist talking to you.
Exactly, and of course not. You've got opera, and our physicians. So this is the new natural.
Yeah.
And each of us is learning how to be natural within it.
Yeah.
But it's a different way of giving and receiving to and from people. And I'm finding it on balance really beneficial.
I agree with you. It truly has been. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Thank you for putting it all in perspective. And now we're going to make you laugh.
We hope, or make you feel
rapid fire questions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or make you feel
Go. I'll have another drink.
Okay. I know. I was like, this is either going to make you laugh or feel very uncomfortable. I'm not quite sure yet. Okay.
What's a song that always gets stuck in your head?
Oh, the biggest earworm? Oh my God. It's probably the one before last that I heard. Oh, that's really hard. I mean, there was one that just popped up on my feed this morning, and it's sung in Hebrew by somebody called Chava Alberstein, and it's about a girl of 30 on her birthday whose boyfriend hasn't brought her a present, and she's talking to God who's hiding behind a tree. And it is absolutely the most heartbreaking thing, and it's going to pop up on Slip Disc in about 4 days from now.
Okay, we will listen.
Okay, so call it that one. Yeah. Okay.
What was the last thing you Googled?
Debussy Eastbourne.
Oh. Okay.
Do we ask why?
Yes, because there's a hotel in Eastbourne called the Grand Hotel, and I actually once stayed in the room where Debussy wrote La Mer.
Cool.
Couldn't write it from France. Oh, because they don't have a proper sea in France. You had to come to the right side of the channel to do it, and I needed the dates.
Okay, we're gonna get some comments on that one.
Favorite sound.
Favorite sound. I would never have said this before the lockdown, but right now it's birdsong.
I knew you were going to say that because I read that. That was a beautiful article, by the way. We should put that link, Carrie.
Mm-hmm.
It was a wonderful article about how you're hearing the birds more now than ever before.
And what we can learn from them.
I know.
Because,
I hear birds all the time because we live in the middle of they wake us up.
The geeks.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, I have to ask this of everyone. What is your favorite curse word in any language?
I have 3 daughters. When they were young, I was having to restrain my tongue, perhaps more than I do nowadays.
Mhm.
And the one that would come out was drat. It's a Victorian word, but drat
That's good.
covers a lot of things.
We're learning a lot of non-curse words.
Yeah.
A lot of people have children at home, and so what's the strangest thing that you know too much about?
The strangest thing that I know too much about is probably the Aramaic language.
Ooh.
Difficult.
Because I was once a rabbinical scholar a long time ago, and I still study the Talmud. And so Hebrew is easy, Aramaic is harder.
Wow.
So yeah, it doesn't come in very useful.
No?
There are not many things that you can. There are not many. Oh, there are jokes in Aramaic, but I mean, they're not. You can't really use it much in daily conversation. So yeah, if you want the strangest things, that's fairly
Aramaic.
pretty good. Yeah, yeah.
What's the craziest rumor you've ever heard about yourself?
That I'm dead.
That's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
This was quite shocking. This was in the early days of the internet. Somebody who had a classical music site, and I think his occupation was a real estate agent. So obviously, it's a pillar of veracity. Anyway, he took issue with something that I'd written in which I'd said that, the recording industry was dying, and he posted Norman Lebrecht is dead. And suddenly my phone rang off the hook because friends from all over the world were saying, no, we're talking to my wife and say, oh, so sorry, no. Yeah, that was the worst.
And we should let you go. The last question we ask, and this is a James Lipton question that he asked at the Reader's Studio.
The Actors Studio.
Sorry, I was reading something and oh gosh, COVID brain.
Yes.
COVID brain, actors think. If heaven exists,
Mm-hmm.
what would you like to hear God say as you enter the pearly gates?
Can I show you my wine cellar?
Fabulous. Is that a hint? Do you want to see? I have to go downstairs and take you down there. You know what I'll do? I will take a video and I will send it to you. Is that okay?
Perfect. Fantastic. Yes. Love to see it.
Thank you so much. Really, this was just a great time.
Pleasure is entirely mine. I mean, I haven't shown you around my little space. This is my loft, my office. I mean, and what you're seeing is only really one small dimension of the stuff around me, because you keep going, and the books just go round and round and round. And then there's a partition in the middle of the room, and on the other side, there's just as many books over there. So it's a pretty good working library.
That's amazing.
And the light coming in, streaming in is
the light streaming in. Yeah.
I don't know. There's my little forest.
That's nice.
This is my music room. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
and that's my wall of shame, as my husband calls it. And we go, yep, that's all of it. So,
well, your room would be my happy place. I'm an avid reader. I love to read, and that just looks cozy and comfortable, and I think you'd have a hard time getting me out of there.
Can I see your room, Carrie?
Oh, it's a hot mess, but yes.
Oh, you have to see Carrie's setup for her camera.
Well, you've got a camera on a tripod.
No, I'm just on my computer, but hold on one second. And no, I'm in a little teeny tiny, because I travel so much, I didn't really want a big place to have to take care of, and it's just my husband and myself. So we live in a downtown Nashville, Tennessee, in a little 800 square foot apartment, which now I'm really regretting.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to see, like, I'm sorry it's such a disaster, but
Okay.
here, I can actually show you. Hold on. You can see.
It's got a great view.
You can see downtown Nashville from here.
Okay. I like
Nice.
Nashville. Okay.
Yeah.
That's
There
nice.
it is. All green and pretty.
Yeah.
Lovely. Great.
So that's downtown Nashville, and we just have a little one bedroom here. and a den, and we turned the den into a workout room. I bought a Peloton bike because my husband and I, it keeps us sane. It's not necessarily for weight loss, it's just for sanity purposes.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's what that's my place.
Okay. Yeah. Let me just share one last thing with you, because since we were talking about books and stuff, a part of my life has been like yours, peripatetic. I traveled quite a lot, especially when I was doing journalism. And my great release was always bookshops. And I would always, you know, at the end of a long day's work or whatever, I would always find where the antiquarian bookstores were. And because, like you, I have a few languages, there were no barriers. You went into a bookshop and you found the stuff that interested you, and you came out with armfuls of it, and you brought it home. And so this is really, that's books have been my world. And
I love that.
Wow. So, well, it's been a pleasure getting to see your world and getting to know you. And
for me too.
Really, we will check back in with you. I think maybe in a month, if you're willing to just say hello to everybody and see how things are doing.
Sure, absolutely, and with pleasure. Yeah, that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
So lovely to be with you, really.
Yes, you too. You really lifted our spirits so much.
Thank you. No, listen, it's all good. It's all good.
Virtual hugs.
Think Indigo.
I love that. That's going in the video.
Yeah. Okay. We're going to use that for all the promos. Indigo, yes.
Indigo. All right.
Thank you, Norman.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye.
Much love.
Bye.
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 Did you put on falsies?
No, did you?
The little ones.
Oh, you did. I don't know how to do it. There. I just blinked. I just put a lot of mascara on. I'm excited. Are you excited?
I don't really know what to think. I'm just kind of like, well, let's go.
How are you feeling? How was the swab? How was the whole thing?
Oh, weird. Okay, so here's me. You know, I'm like my mother with the purse that has everything in it. What was that television show where you could where they'd be like, if anybody has a Q-tip in their purse, you can get $100.
Is it Wheel of Fortune? Not Wheel of Fortune. Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal.
Let's make a deal.
So I'm that lady, and I'd pull out a Q-tip and get my $100. But I normally am prepared, and I brought tissues. You know, I'm thinking, oh, we're gonna want to blow our noses. No, I really needed water. Because however that went down there, it was different than a scope.
Did they or did they
Oh no, it's through the nose. You go like this, and they just shove it on all the way back in there. It does not hurt, but it's uncomfortable. Oh. And what was so funny was Chris went first, and it came out. I saw his body go like this when it got further back, and she took it out, and he goes, "Well, that was horrible."
He said it or she said it?
He said it. He goes, that was horrible. And then they came over to my side and did it. And then we'll know in 3 to 5 days. I'm glad we went.
I am too. You know, if nothing else, you're feeling fine, right?
Oh yeah. I just want to know if I'm a carrier that doesn't show any symptoms. So that's my concern. So then I know who I can be around and who I can't. You know what I mean?
So then you can come up here and have a road trip. What do you think, lipstick? Too dark? Okay.
Oh, I love it. No, I love it.
Kind of too late now, isn't it?
Can you do that?
I used to be able to make my tongue into like a clover leaf. No more. We're singers. We can do that shit.
We're weird.
Right?
Okay.